The Ashcroft family dinners were less about the food and more about showing off money. This night at their big house near Napa Valley was going to be especially annoying. I sat by the fireplace, watching my cousins try to brag the most. "I just bought a ranch in Jackson Hole," said Preston, swirling his wine. "It's next to a guy who owns half of Silicon Valley." "Please," said Cassandra, opening her fancy purse. "We just bought a vineyard in Tuscany. It has private access to the Mediterranean. You can't put a price on that view." I smiled quietly behind my iced tea, and Evelyn spoke sharply. "You've been very quiet, Nora." Preston leaned forward with fake kindness. "We were just wondering where you live now." And there it was, I thought. "What about it?" I asked, putting down my glass. "That small duplex in Portland," he said. "You're still renting, right? The one on Alder Street?" Cassandra added, pretending to be surprised. "I didn't know people our age still rented." I almost laughed. That Alder Street building was actually owned by my company, West Pine Holdings. They thought I was just a renter. I was the boss. "I like my space," I said calmly. "You're 35, honey," and Evelyn said with a smirk. "It's time to grow up and buy something real." Real? I thought. I own a portfolio worth $1.8 billion, full of apartment buildings, office towers, and even Ashcroft Plaza, the very place we're sitting in. 6 months ago, I bought it quietly through a private company so they would never know it was me. "I'm doing just fine," I said. Preston smirked. "You can't even afford a mortgage." I leaned back and let them talk. Soon, the lease papers would come to their desks, and my name would be on them. Dad finally looked up from his wine. Now, Preston. Not everyone has your sharp mind." Nora chose her own path. Aunt Evelyn sighed, disappointed I wasn't married to a rich hedge fund manager or a famous blogger. They thought I spent my days showing cheap apartments to broke students, barely making money. What they didn't know was that Nora Hale, the family failure, was actually West Pine Holdings, the secret company buying properties all over the Pacific Northwest for 10 years. "Speaking of real estate," Cassandra said with a smile, "did you hear about Alder Street? Some company bought the whole block. They're going to tear it down. Looks like your apartment is finally going." I kept calm. I was the buyer. I had no plans to tear anything down. Alder Street was special: old brick walls, vintage details, and rent protections for families who'd lived there for years. I was carefully fixing it up. "Really?" I asked. I hadn't heard that. "Of course not," Preston said with a smirk. "Big deals like that are way above you. If you get kicked out," Evelyn said cheerfully, "you can always move back to the guest house. We'll help you find something nicer. Maybe even someone nicer." "I'm happy where I am," I said simply, "and so is my landlord." Cassandra laughed tightly. "You can't live a small life forever." The Hale name used to mean something in this state. It still did, but not the way they thought. In the real estate world, West Pine was known for honest growth and caring about tenants, the opposite of my cousin's flashy projects that tore down neighborhoods just for show. "Actually," Dad said, putting down his glass, "this meeting is partly about business." "For God's sake," Preston snapped, "you can't even help your own family." Mom gave him a warning look, but said nothing. Even Dad was back to scrolling on his phone, not defending me. They didn't know how helpful I was about to be, just not the way they expected. Tomorrow morning, West Pine Holdings would make a public announcement. Starting right away, Ashcroft Plaza would have big changes. No more hidden budgets. No more giving jobs only to family. No more treating the building like a family credit card. I looked around the penthouse. Artwork bought with maintenance money. Couches that cost 3 times their value. Fixtures installed by Cassandra's husband's company with fake bills. "Anyway," I said, standing up and brushing off my jeans, "some of us have early mornings." Cassandra smirked. "Going to show more cheap apartments." I put my worn leather bag over my shoulder. Inside were board reports, legal papers, and renovation plans worth more than everything in this room. "The Ashcroft Plaza board is already here," she said. Your family came early, trying to charm the independent members. I smiled, imagining Preston and Cassandra working hard to save themselves. The audit reports were all printed and ready. The investigation found even more than we thought. She paused. Are you sure you want to do this? Once they find out, there's no going back. They need to learn, I said quietly, that being from a famous family doesn't mean you can abuse power. I looked at my reflection in the glass. No more jeans and cardigan. Today, I wore a sharp navy suit, strong but soft. The kind of look Aunt Evelyn wanted me to wear to meet a husband. Instead, I was wearing it to break their whole house of cards. The announcement goes live in 20 minutes, Isla said. Once it does, you'll be revealed. Then let's start, I said, picking up my briefcase. The Ashcroft Plaza boardroom fell silent as I walked in. My family was huddled at the far end, uneasy, underdressed, and visibly shaken. Who are you? Preston barked. This is a private meeting. I calmly set my briefcase down at the head of the table. I'm Nora Hale, I said, founder and sole owner of West Pine Holdings, the company that owns this building and several others your family illegally exploited. Evelyn went ghost white. Cassandra's mouth opened, but no words came out. My father's hands clenched his pen tightly. Nora, he whispered. I nodded. Good morning. I opened my briefcase and began sliding audit reports across the table. Shall we review your financials? This is insane, Preston stammered. You? Just what? I asked. The black sheep, the renter, the woman in consignment clothes. Cassandra blinked in disbelief. But you show apartments. I work, Preston, would you care to explain the $2 million zero in roof repairs that financed your Jackson Hole property? His face flushed so red, I thought he might faint. Or Cassandra, I continued, flipping the next page. Perhaps you'd like to explain your husband's invoices, charging 3 times the market rate for basic plumbing. You'd air your own family's dirty laundry like this? Aunt Evelyn gasped. No, I said calmly. You aired it out. I'm just making sure it gets cleaned. Dad finally spoke, voice low and pleading. Nora, sweetheart, we can explain. Don't, I said, raising my hand. I've watched this family treat our great-grandfather's legacy like a personal ATM. While you mocked my so-called humble life, I was building something better, based on values, not vanity. But why? Cassandra asked, dazed. Why pretend to struggle? I didn't pretend anything, I replied. I lived modestly. I invested wisely. You assumed wealth had to be loud. This will ruin us, Cassandra whispered, pale. No, I said firmly. This will save you from yourselves. Effective today, Ashcroft Plaza will operate transparently. No more shell games. No more sweetheart contracts. And if we don't comply? Preston tried to sound bold, but his voice trembled. I smiled. Then I'll pass these reports to the authorities. I'm sure the IRS would find them enlightening. Silence thickened. What do you want? Dad finally asked. I want you to remember what the Hale name meant before all this. I met their eyes one by one. Great-grandfather built communities, not just profit margins. I stood, gathering my papers. You have a choice. Work with me to restore that legacy, I said evenly, or find somewhere else to live. I hear there's finally facing actual consequences. Cassandra enrolled in a public university real estate program. She began volunteering at a transitional housing shelter downtown. She told me later it gave her more purpose than her gallery openings ever had. And Dad? He asked to learn the business, not as a father reclaiming control, but as a student. This time, he wanted to understand what I'd built. 6 months later, I sat in my Alder Street apartment. Yes, I kept it. Reviewing new quarterly reports, Ashcroft Plaza was thriving. Leases were stable. Tenant satisfaction was up. Small retailers on the ground floor were turning healthy profits. A knock broke my focus. I opened the door to find my mother. She wore jeans and no makeup. It took me a moment to process the casualness. I got your invitation, she said, holding it up. A courtyard holiday party, I nodded. It's not quite your scene. No, she admitted, glancing around my modest space. But I'm learning that maybe scene isn't everything. She picked up a photo, me at 23, beaming at my real estate license ceremony. I never asked, she said, why this path? Because I wanted to build something real, I replied. Not just buy it and flaunt it. And now, she murmured, you control more than all of us. I do, I nodded. But control isn't the goal. Purpose is. She looked at me seriously. Will you teach me? Come tonight, I said. Meet the families who've lived here for decades. Listen, that's where legacy begins. Later, I stood by my window, watching lights twinkle across Portland, this city I'd quietly made mine. Ashcroft Plaza glowed in the distance. No longer a monument to greed, Ashcroft Plaza had become a symbol of restoration. Below me, the Alder Street building buzzed with quiet life. Brickwork, original wood beams, and garden courtyards were preserved with care. My phone pinged with new messages, partnership offers, speaking invitations, acquisition deals. West Pine Holdings was in high demand now. But I kept my schedule humane, my routine grounded. Success, to me, wasn't about outshining my past. It was about building something that mattered, something that would last. Sometimes, the person they pity becomes the one they must learn from. And sometimes, the best kind of triumph doesn't roar, it endures. A week later, at the Alder Street holiday party, I stood by the garden fountain, watching my family acclimate to a world they once dismissed. Mom sat beside Mrs. Lopez, a tenant here for 38 years, listening with genuine interest. Preston helped string lights with Mr. Keller, a World War II veteran and the longest-term resident. Cassandra laughed beside a table of kids icing sugar cookies. Slowly, they were learning. Real wealth isn't in what you can flaunt. It's in what you preserve, what you share, what you elevate. Dad joined me near the cocoa table. You know, he said, your great-grandfather believed buildings should shelter hearts, not just wallets. I nodded. I'd found his old ledgers, handwritten notes about protecting tenants. We'd forgotten that. He looked at me not like a daughter who'd gone off track, but like someone who'd carried the torch he'd dropped. You could have ruined us. Never the point, I said, watching a little girl twirl under the fairy lights. I wanted to build something that would outlast me. Sometimes, the greatest success isn't in proving them wrong. It's in offering them a better version of right. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or quietly counted out, maybe you see a little of yourself in me. I didn't set out to prove anyone wrong. I just wanted to build something real, something that couldn't be taken away because it was rooted in values, not vanity. If my story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? What have you built in silence while others doubted you? Let's talk about it. Let's give each other credit for the quiet work, the long nights, the tough choices. And if you're facing a moment like I once did, when the world expects nothing from you, don't shout louder. Just build stronger. You don't need approval.